So my name is Fritz. I'm the Environmental Justice Civil Rights Coordinator at the North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality. Yes, you heard that right. Previous to that, I was the GIS coordinator. And so, like Hannah said, I always think, can this be mapped? Because that's the frame of thinking that I always have. So this is about my experience with creating a sense of community using a map as an activity for an event that I was in. So the flight plan that we're going to go through today, very ironic that a bush pilot was in here talking earlier. I didn't plan it that way, but that's just the way it happened. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the inspiration that I had, which some of the other speakers talked about as their inspiration. The pitch that I had to not only the event organizers, but also my boss, and the method to my madness, and then what happened on the day of the event, and then the results. The results are really in two phases. One is the actual event itself, and then the second phase is the hard copy cartographic product, I'll call like the souvenir product, which I'll tell you right now, read the last chapter, that isn't done yet. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So the inspiration that I had was, for those of you who were at NACIS last year, in 2022 in Minneapolis, Faye Passow is a printmaker and an artist who specializes in making a lot of map-based art. And this Minnesota Principal Hot Dishes by Region happened to be a gift, a housewarming gift for my husband and I when we moved from Minneapolis to North Dakota in 1996. And so I've been following Faye's work and all of these great map things that she has. And so when I saw that she was on the schedule, I instantly volunteered to moderate, hint, hint, volunteer to moderate at NACIS. Then you get to meet these cool people. And I'm super appreciative of Silas, who had their camera and took a picture of us, and I was totally going all fangirl on Faye's work, because it's so cool. And I asked Faye, in your Etsy shop, I don't see North and South Dakota. I see Western, which has these groovy cowgirls and cowboys on it, but nothing relating to North and South Dakota and all the cool things. I mean, Mount Rushmore, the Badlands. I mean, why wouldn't that make it on a map? And she said, well, it all comes down to economics. There just isn't enough people in North and South Dakota to make it economically viable for her as a professional artist to produce that work. Yet again, we're flyover. So I thought, well, I'm a geographer. I'm not an artist, as you can tell by my sketchbook. But I started to develop this idea. It's like, well, there's so many cool things that you miss if you fly over or just drive through on I-90 or I-94. There's so many cool things you miss and so many cool people that you could meet if you go there. So this happened to coincide, this inspiration. Note the date, it's about a month after NACIS 2022. And I was involved on the planning committee for this event. I keep talking about this event. Let me describe it a little bit. In 2018, I received a grant from the Bush Foundation. The Bush Foundation is a foundation that works in the OTA states, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and the 23 Native nations that share that same geography. The Bush Foundations their tagline is, invest in great ideas and the people who power them. They fund efforts to support and inspire creative problem solving. Since 2017, there are 7 cohorts and over 200 people in North and South Dakota that received these Change Network grants. And there was going to be the first ever alumni gathering happening in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in April of 2023. That I was on the planning committee. And so we needed some sort of a gathering activity as people enter the convention hall before things start. And these are people in the Change Network. They're very active in their community. They fund the efforts to rebuild the Ellendale Opera House. They fund the efforts to keep their rivers clean. They're city council members. They're nonprofit organizers. They're really active in their native communities. They're child care advocates. They're missing and indigenous persons advocates. So these are people who really believe in rural America and especially the places that they love and they call home in North and South Dakota. So my pitch was, I convinced my friend Cary from Leeds, South Dakota, who is an artist. I said, Cary, wouldn't it be cool if we had some sort of an activity that people would draw or somehow or another mark on a map what's really important to them, what drives them and keeps them to stay in their rural communities in North and South Dakota. And Cary's like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if I showed her Faye's work, just as if we bordered the map with these cartoons of all of the change makers in North and South Dakota. So that was our idea. We had a formal proposal to the folks from the Bush Foundation for a gathering activity. And so the official objectives were, it would create a sense of community, recognize the importance of specific places in our community, and also just have fun. I just quickly did a screenshot in ArcPro of North and South Dakota and just quickly slapped up in the standard font in ArcPro. This is generally what it's gonna look like. And that was enough, and they said, that sounds like a super cool activity to bring people in, to get conversations started. So as I go on, I worked with a printer in Bismarck, North Dakota, who's used to my crazy requests for printing. And when I had described what I wanted to do, he suggested, and I forgot to get the name of the paper, but he has a special paper that's coated that you can write on with like a dry erase marker. I wanted something that I could put tape on and remove labels, or people could move labels around. So he was really great with helping me with that. I printed a 36 by 46, the E-size sheet of North and South Dakota. I got all of the 200 participants' hometown, put it on there, general geographies, you know, the Missouri River, the Red River, the major rivers, the tribal areas, the trust lands, those major boundaries, so people would have a bit of a sense of place, because as most of the talks here that we've talked, is people are drawn to that sense of place. They're embedded in their community, whether they see it on a map, but they get even more invested when they're like, ooh, this is where I live. This is how things are represented on a map. And so that's meaningful for them, but what we were asking is, you put what's important on the map, right? I'm just gonna put the bare minimum. I want you to fill in everything else. And so I did have some borders, some guidelines for folks. All locations must be open to the public. That seems like a no-brainer, but a lot of people are like, well, I really love going to Uncle Bob's house because the fishing from his backyard where the river flows through is awesome. Well, Uncle Bob may not like it if it's on a public map that a bunch of people are going in his river. So that was one of the caveats. It has to be open to the public. And then the other concept is in the Dakotas, in the prairie. If you've ever been out on the prairie and you stand there and you go like, I love sunsets in North Dakota. Okay, but where in North Dakota? I have to be able to put it on the map. I love sunsets from Double Ditch Park, which is a historic site just north of Bismarck along the Missouri River Bluffs. It's villages, the Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara Nation, and the views, it looks like what Lewis and Clark saw when they were going up there. It looks like when the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara were there thousands of years earlier. It's just beautiful. So those were some caveats. So the day of the event came, I had my map roll, I had my little pre-cut marker symbols, and I had markers posted near the entrance. We set things up so that basically you either had to walk really far around the table to avoid participating, which some people did, and that's okay. Or you just go in and it starts a conversation. So as hoped, it really was a conversation starter. This was our first meeting after the pandemic, so some of these people had never met in person before. So this is their first time meeting each other. Another thing, as the environmental justice coordinator for NDDEQ, I was really interested in importance of places and how people want those places to be perceived and protected and honored. And so that also was things that was important to me. The Make Yourself into a Cartoon, Cary prepped this little diagram that showed different hair textures, different eye shapes, different nose shapes, things like that. I heard somebody else talk in one of the talks here in the past 2 days. Drawing is really hard. Some people, it's a barrier. So, but if you give them a couple of guidelines, they'll hopefully participate. So we had about 75 people of the 200 that were in attendance. And you'll notice some people really took it to heart and they did a lot of shading of things, and then other folks just drew a stick figure. And that was totally okay. The sad part is that we only had about 25 people that opted into doing the cartoon. But you can see we had a wide variety of styles of how people drew themselves as a cartoon. We had one pilot. There's a woman there who is a pilot in Aberdeen, South Dakota, so it was interesting hearing the talks about what is in the different airports. She actually makes notes which airports have the best food, because there's many times that she would fly into a rural airport, be there for a couple hours, and there's no restaurants at all, and so you're faced with the vending machine, granola bar, and a bottle of soda, and that's all you have. So anyways, side note. For the map, these were the general guidelines that I had next to the map. The question was last, where do you take first-time visitors to your community? That's really the first question. When people come to your community that have never been to Frederick, South Dakota, or Kyle, South Dakota, where do you bring them? What places do you like to show off in your community? Because again, these folks are really proud of their small towns, and so they want to show off what's there. I had pre-cut markers like that, and just Sharpie pens that people could draw on. And so here is the day of the event. People were gathering around, talking, laughing. It was just as I hoped. It was lovely. It was wonderful. So here is the final where folks put things on the map. You can see, for those of you who are familiar with Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Sioux Falls, oh my God, I was afraid to do that. I'm just gonna point at the screen. You can see where there's the lot of dots up there. That's where Sioux Falls is. So just to give a sense of time, I am from Bismarck, which is above where my shadow of my camera is up there in the center. It's about a 5.5-hour drive from my hometown down to Sioux Falls. So that's a bit of a distance, but I was pretty happy with the geographic distribution of where things were. The other thing is I was pretty happy with the discussion that evolved around European-based names versus the indigenous names. Somebody made some comments about one of the state parks in South Dakota, and somebody else wrote another contrary dot on there, and it had a really great intentional discussion of how we call things and how the names of things impact how you feel about those things. Also, Pahasapa is the Black Hills, and it was recognized in the indigenous name. What I did is I took all of those points, digitized them in ArcMap or ArcPro, and eventually this will be put into some hopefully beautiful product that I have. I'm super happy with how folks integrated things in their community or places that they like to go in North Dakota. Sunkawaka Skapaha up in by where it says the View in Spirit Lake Casino. That is a Spirit Lake Nation wildlife refuge, and it's a buffalo reserve and a native prairie reserve. It is absolutely beautiful. So bringing things out that typically you wouldn't see on a normal map and important to that community. Notice how there's no map in the middle of this yet. This is gonna be the end result. I envision this as a 5x7 card written on cardstock, and like Faye's work, She has a lot of her stuff surrounded with little icons of what is important. I have the faces around there, but there just wasn't enough faces to completely fill it, so I put in some other important icons, like an accordion, because Lawrence Welk is from North Dakota. I have the state capitals of North and South Dakota on the bottom. I have the school mascots of NDSU and SDSU up at the top, the bison and the jackrabbit. So those are some things. I was experimenting with different ways of representing the land, but it didn't really match with the style of the cartoons. My husband made this because he is more of an artist than I am. I have worked in the science realm too long, and I'm intimidated by things that are called art. And so he did this watercolor, but when we put it together with the cartoons, it just stylistically, it didn't match. So it needs some work. So in the end, I thought the Make Me Into cartoon was very successful. It got people talking, it got people together. As an artistic element in a final cartographic product, I think it will work. I will make it work. The other thing, though, is that on the day of the event, I would have only provided Sharpies, black markers of varying width, instead of having pens and pencils and whatever, because it took me a lot of time. I had to go over things. And then also uniform size pieces of paper. That would have helped a lot with scaling things around the border. The map itself, I thought that was also a success. Creating an online map would have been super useful, especially for people who were not able to attend the meeting, that they could contribute. As a cartographic product, meh, not yet. I'm not quite there yet. But this is a work in progress, so maybe at the next NACIS, I will hand out little postcards of what you miss if you fly over the Dakotas. So, thank you very much for joining me today.